Ladies and gentlemen, we are going to call this meeting of the Oakville Public Library Board to order for Thursday, the 20th of July, 2023. And before we get started, I'd like to read our territorial land acknowledgement. And that goes as follows. Oakville Public Library is situated on the Treaty Number 14 and Treaty Number 22 treaty lands and the territory of the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation and the traditional territory of the Huron-Wendat and the Haudenosaunee. Oakville is currently home to many different First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples. Regardless of where we come from, we are all interconnected through the land we live on, the water that we use, and the air that we breathe. We are committed to a continuous learning journey and allyship. We seek to elevate Indigenous voices and lived experience to cultivate reconciliation in Oakville. Committee clerk, assistant, whatever your title is here, are there any regrets today?
We have regrets from Councillor Chisholm.
Thank you. And members of the board, are there any declarations of pecuniary or conflict of interest to declare? I'm not seeing any. You were circulated the minutes for the last meeting, both the confidential set as well as the regular set. Does anybody wish to separate them, or otherwise I'm looking for a motion to approve? Okay, I got a motion to approve from Rebecca. Is there a seconder, please? Thank you, Bill. All in favor? And those are carried. Okay, we have, moving on to item number 5, we have the Policy Review Ad Hoc Committee, which was, the minutes of the Policy Review Ad Hoc Committee. They were circulated, I believe, yesterday or today. I can't remember when. Today. Has everybody had a chance to have a look at those? And if so, I would like to have a motion to approve those, please. Thank you. Those have been moved by Rod. Is there a seconder for that? Thank you, Celso. Are there any comments, questions, or any feedback from the minutes? By the way, congratulations, Chair Rod. I'm not seeing any, so I'll call the question. All in favor of the receipt of the minutes, approval of the minutes, I should say. That's carried. Thank you. We move on to item 6, which is our consent agenda. We have 6 matters on the consent agenda. Traditionally, for those who may be watching at home, the consent agenda is typically routine matters that the board deals with on a regular basis, and we typically do not go into discussion unless a member of the board wishes to ask questions or otherwise discuss the matters. So members of the board, do you have any separations for our consent agenda this evening? I am not seeing any. Celso?
My speaker's not working.
Oh.
Say it out loud.
Oh, this one is good.
Okay, thank you. Which item?
Under recruitment, so that's 6.3.
Okay.
Employee retention.
Employee retention.
Yeah. So I'd like to thank you for including information about recruitment, and it's pretty impressive that 548 people applied to that library. I think that underlines the fact that the library is a great place to work and it's attracting a lot of people. It's amazing. The question is on the retirement. So you noted that 45% of the staff were eligible to retire in 2017, and that actually happened all the way through 2021, but now only 13%. So did it get down? Well, great job turning it around, but how did it get down? Is it just people retiring and getting replaced by young, or just growth, or both?
So primarily it's that people who were eligible to retire during the pandemic and recovery from the pandemic, we've seen a significant amount of retirements. And then when we're hiring, it is just bringing our workforce into better alignment.
Good. And one more question that's on item 6.4, performance and metrics. Phone calls dropped from by 57%, then 52% in 2 years. I know that emails are going up, but not by the same amount. How do you interpret that such a sudden drop?
So we're not surprised that they continue to drop. They significantly went up during the pandemic because that was one of the only ways people could actually talk to a person. They couldn't come in. I also think it refers to our website being better and people being able to access information like hours or information about different products easier than come in. Those would be the top 2 things that I think would definitely.
So not drop in interest. It's truly just other media taking over.
Yes, and I think I'm excited to see that the footfall traffic, we're actually seeing growth from 2019. So I think maybe instead of people calling, they're just stopping back in.
Okay, good. And finally, on item 6.5, last month you gave us a challenge to find typos, so I found one. On the appendix,
Yes.
the May
Yeah.
2022 instead of 2023 on the actual column.
Right,
right?
okay.
That said, it would be nice to see year over year, if that's at all possible, because that's what I was looking for.
So that's the financial indicators?
Correct.
So you want year over year for,
Not trying to create more work, but at first I saw 2023, 2023 to 2022, so I was trying to compare year over year, but really, it's budget and actuals, right? Sort of.
yes. Yeah.
And that was just a typo at a heading, but it'd be nice to have, in addition to actuals and budget, what the last year was, so that we could see the growth, if at all
I can talk to
possible.
Belinda about that, yep.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Further questions or comments on this? Bill? You're still on the same item?
Sorry. I have a question about on section 6.4.
Sure, go ahead.
Active cardholders are, I noticed they're still below the 2019 level, and I think that's right. I wrote it down very quickly, but so I was just wondering, is that an issue with other libraries, or I know it's picked up a lot, but it's still below, which I was kind of surprised to see that it hasn't quite caught up yet.
I don't know offhand how we compare to our comparator libraries. It's certainly something that I can look into. I do know that it's something that we're looking into internally and trying to get a better understanding of why that is.
Yeah.
We've talked about it a bit in the past that we're definitely continuing to gain card holders, but we're losing them at almost an equal rate. So Joe and his team have been working on a retention plan and a communication plan. So hopefully, if you've been inactive for a month, that we just send you an email and say, hey, this is what's coming up, and just how do we re-engage,
Right.
or try to understand that if somebody come in, they're redoing their bathroom, they came in for a bunch of plumbing books, their need is fulfilled, are they just not coming back because they don't know what else we offer, and then how do we get them that information? So those are the different marketing and communication areas that we're looking to explore.
Okay, thanks.
Further comments or questions on any of the consent items? Okay, I have a quick question on, same one as also 6.3. Do we have any benchmark ideas as how we compare to other libraries in terms of employee retention?
I don't know that offhand. I know Tricia does, but she's on vacation, but I can include that information.
That'd be great, thank
Yep.
you. It'd be good to be able to benchmark us against
Yep.
other libraries. I know we
Yep.
saw that report a number of years ago.
I think we're average
Okay.
or a little bit better, but I can confirm.
That's great, thank you. Can I get a motion to approve 6.1 through 6.6? Thank you very much. Rebecca, seconded by, who's seconding? Thank you, Mayor, Avis. All in favor? I'm still learning names. Carried. Okay, we're moving on to, we have no confidential consent items. We move on to our discussion agenda. And 8.1 is the starting with the budget driver report. And I guess you're presenting that too.
I wouldn't open that just yet, actually. Thank you.
Who's going to?
Colleen is going to start.
Oh, okay. Hello, Colleen. There you are.
Hello, Mr. Chair. Thank you for this opportunity to do opening comments about the 2024 budget process. As many of the members of the board will be aware, the strong mayor legislation came into effect July 1st for Oakville. Our first order of business in terms of transition was to review the budget process, as now under the legislation, the mayor is the person that actually provides the strategic directions on how the budget is shaped. And the mayor presents the budget to council for council's consideration and comments. So yesterday, and we would be pleased to provide forward all of these reports to you. I think you might find them to be very helpful, and it included a very detailed presentation from our town solicitor, Doug Carr, providing background on the overall legislation. Our mayor has decided as part of the process that he's going to try and mirror the former process with respect to a budget committee having budget chair, budget vice chair, and having all members of council on the committee in order to provide him with advice and recommendations on how the budget should be shaped. His goal is to ensure that the process is as collaborative as possible. One of the notable changes you will see as part of this particular process is that there is a greater opportunity for public consultation. So yesterday, Jonathan Vanderheiden, the town treasurer, presented a high-level budget forecast for 2024, highlighting significant issues such as, where inflation sits, the concerns around inflation over the next few months, because inflation, as I think everyone has personally experienced, has been very volatile. And he freely acknowledged that it's going to be a challenge to do accurate budget forecasting in the way that we have been very proud to do in the past, because some of the markets are so volatile. In addition, we have challenges with expansion from a growth perspective. We have new pressures from a labor relations perspective as well. So the budget development is going to be very challenging indeed, but I know that everyone is committed to doing a fantastic job. The first public consultation actually starts today and will go till September 15th. The intent behind this particular public consultation is to get high-level themes from the public. What are the major issues that they're concerned about? Are they concerned, for example, that taxes need to be kept, the tax increases need to be kept as low as possible? Are they concerned about particular issues in their neighborhood? Are there broader themes that we need to contemplate and incorporate? One of the big challenges for all of our community services teams, which includes the library, is an overall community surge that we're noticing in all aspects of our program delivery. We're finding that coming out of COVID that our residents are very excited to come back in person. They're very excited to come back to specific events. I know some of Tara's programs that they have presented in the past are experiencing significantly larger numbers in terms of participation, which I think is really exciting to see, but it has its own challenges that come along with that. So we're really looking forward to hearing from the public, and certainly the library board is welcome to provide their input at this stage of public consultation as well. On September 6th, this is a budget meeting, and this is where any report, let me reframe this, any department or team that is either proposing new service or a change in service levels needs to bring a report forward to council for its consideration. So a simple example would be the Roads and Works team at the town was asked to cost out and consider the possibility of a withdrawal program for residents. So they will be bringing a report forward to council to present what the cost implications might be and what would the operational and resource needs be as well. At that point, council would determine whether or not they would they would accept the report and refer it on. Sorry, that's the sound of my dishwasher. Sorry about that. I know, I suddenly thought, wow, is that gurgling in the background?
I thought it was something else.
So as I was saying, so those reports would be considered at that meeting, and should council wish to refer them on to the budget committee for consideration, they would do so at that time. Other requests and when I say this, other requests that would be to try and maintain service levels, because across the corporation and in the library, we are having challenges in particular areas around maintaining our current service levels because of the surge in participation. Those types of requests, and I think Tara has a couple of requests that fall into that category, will be considered internally by the executive leadership team at the town and then determined whether or not those requests will go on to be included for consideration by the Budget Committee. On October 17th and 18th, it's a two-day Festival of Fun. This is the Commissioner presentations. As Commissioner of Community Services, I would be also presenting the budget for the OPL as part of the Community Services portfolio. On October 19th to November 2nd, another public consultation on the draft budget. So people have an opportunity to look at it while it's still in draft form, but there'll be a lot more detail in terms of what potentially might be included. And again, they have an opportunity to speak to that. On October 31st, I will say, it has been acknowledged this is Halloween. It was determined by the committee yesterday that should the delegation meeting be during the day, it might proceed. However, if it is at night, we understand that people have family obligations and Halloween will obviously take precedent and the meeting will be moved. So stay tuned on that particular date. And then on November 3rd, budget recommendations go to the mayor for his consideration. November 20th, the mayor presents the budget publicly. November 28th, again, more public opportunity for public delegations again. And then on December 20th, it's considered to be a special meeting where all of council will look at the proposed budget and vote on it. So we would be happy to provide this schedule to you. It's a lot more complicated than what our normal process has been in the past. But what I'm really pleased to see is the increased amount of public consultation opportunities. I think our public is much more engaged than they were prior to the pandemic. And I think we'll see a lot of interest and a lot of really great input and feedback from our residents. So I just wanted to let you know what that particular schedule looks like. The mayor has provided us with direction, and for the OPL has been directed to come in at 4.5%. He did a separate recommendation for the OPL. Chair Noel, I think the intent behind that was to align to a similar practice that he's familiar with at the region. Because I know that for separate agencies, boards and commissions, they provide a separate recommendation as well. Perhaps you might have an opportunity to comment on that experience and if there's anything that the OPL board should consider as part of that.
Thank you, Colleen. Questions for Colleen, and I will comment on that as well, I guess.
And I apologize for my dishwasher.
That's fine. We believe it was a dishwasher. So, I mean, I don't have a lot to comment because this is all so new. And I have a question, and that is, are there any particular peculiarities as it applies to the library budget over any other municipal realm of influence because we have that separate legislation over any other aspect of the town's administration, or is it exactly the same?
I would say at this point, it's exactly the same.
Okay.
The one thing that the library, and we don't have to do it as part of this particular budget process, but it's certainly something that Tara and I have talked about before, is we may want to consider how we incorporate funds in a strategic way from fundraising. Mm-hmm. And how that might be applied going forward. Traditionally, we have been very conservative and prudent with respect to the use of our fundraising dollars, which I think was the right thing to do. But we may have some challenges going forward where the fundraising dollars could be applied in a very strategic and prudent way for specific purchases. And I think it might be worth having a conversation, at least at a high level with the board members.
Thank you. So just on the regional piece. So yeah, at the region, because we fund a number of agencies that are separately either incorporated or they in fact exist by separate legislation. So for example, the Police Services Board under the Police Services Act is a very specific and prescribed process for preparing and presenting the budget to the local municipality. it's even more peculiar when you get to the conservation authorities and such, because they're entirely independent, as opposed to police board, which has like the library board, a dotted line connection to the region. I think that it makes sense to give us our own budget allocation, because sometimes, I mean, I think it informs the staff as they're preparing that information for us to consider, and I think gives us a more clear goal. It's always worked well at the region, so I'm actually quite enthusiastic about having that. I think it just makes a lot more sense, and rather than trying to figure out where we fit in the overall municipal I guess, pile of requests, then we have a specific target that is ours alone, as opposed to having to, play off another department or whatever. So it's clearly the allocation, that's the allocation, or that's the target for the library. And we don't necessarily have to say, well, if Parks takes this much, then maybe we'll have to tweak ours a little bit. So I think it gives the library more clear-cut direction. And I think it reflects the importance and the value of the library to the municipal culture as well. So I think it's worked very well for us at the region. I think it's a good change. But this whole strong, pardon me?
The one thing I did want to clarify is that the 4.5% also has been applied to all town departments. So the library has not been treated in a different way or given a different target, just so everyone is clear.
Right. That's same at the region. So, I mean, for example, the region, the current guideline is 5.7. So that's what we've been given at the police board, and that's what we have to stick with this year. So, and the other departments are having to live within that too. Okay, thanks, Colleen. Further questions or comments on this? Absolutely. Oh, I'm sorry, you didn't get a chance. Colleen stole your thunder. Oh yeah, and on that note, by the way, if you're interested in learning more about the Strong Mayor's process and how that is going to impact everything that we do as a municipality, if you watch last council meeting, there was an excellent presentation by Doug Carr, who went through it in great detail. And we could circulate the slide. I have the slide deck that he gave. We could circulate that, and it answers a lot of the questions. So as ratepayers yourselves, and as trustees of the library system, I think it would be good for you to understand that, because everything is changing. Everything is changing. So it'd be good to understand it. I'm sorry, go ahead, Colleen, or Tara.
Yeah, so for the board members who were here last term, the budget drivers report is slightly different in that we only received direction from the mayor last night. So this is a little bit light. So we had to prepare it a little bit differently in that we used, well, the budget driver report is not really looking at, okay, this is our target. It's what are our needs this year or heading into next year? Like, where are our challenges? Where are our pressure points? Let's look at how we could tackle them and then put them in the budget, and then to have a conversation with the board about, okay, these are some of the pressures, these are some of the ideas that we have about addressing them, and to kind of get feedback from the board, like, yeah, okay, we're interested in exploring that. No, we're not interested in exploring that. Concentrate somewhere else. I will say that also the other thing, can you actually put it up, Nick? Thanks. Currently, based on what I provided you here, I did create a chart. For that, you get a good sense of where we're starting from. So everything that we're asking for in terms of a wish list comes to 6.79% increase for next year. So we're being asked to say within a 4.5. So there might be some challenges. We may have to definitely look at that. I will flag that when you're looking at inflation, we initially used 3%. So I will be having a conversation with finance about whether or not it's 3% or whether or not we should be using 4.5. But I will point out that 3%, that puts us at pretty much 4.6. Just addressing collections, although I will point out the last line, that's an adjustment to collections. That's that 100,000. In there, but just to kind of give you a look that this is where we're starting from, and that I'm interested to hear from the board about some of the pain points that we're talking about, particularly around service levels at Glen Abbey and marketing and communication, and looking at advancing positions that we had put in place for 16 Mile opening in 2025. We didn't want to necessarily need new staff, because I do suspect that once 16 Mile opens, we will see Glen Abbey's popularity reduce as people move to the new facility. The majority of all new card holders for both Glen Abbey and Iroquois Ridge are from Ward 7. And they are taking the bulk of the pressure up there. Although we are seeing an increase in usage in the 16-mile temporary facility, which is great. And the staff, when they're talking to people, people are looking to go to 16 Mile because there's no space at Glen Abbey. And when I mean no space is there's nowhere for them to sit. I was in there Friday morning 2 weeks ago, and there wasn't an empty chair. I think summer school must be in because there were students everywhere. And even in, and this will come forward in some of the reports, but the public consultation that we did recently for the master plan, that came up repeatedly as well, was talking about Glen Abbey and how busy Glen Abbey is and the struggle that people have to find the seating or the services that they need. And so this was our attempt to address that issue as well. Jumping on what we talked a little bit about earlier about our marketing and communications. Our marketing and communication team is extremely small. And the drive for more digital content, more print content, we're looking at trying to increase our multilingual pamphlets and copies. As much as I would love to get rid of some of our print, people still love it. And that's what they come in looking for. So it is providing us with real challenges, particularly as we look to introduce new services to be able to communicate and market them appropriately. So as part of the introduction of the permanent 16-mile branch, we took a look at not only what we need to operate that branch, but as we grow as a corporation, what services and corporate services need to expand in order to properly support that. And then that will be in place moving forward. And then additionally, in here is the adjustment for collections that we highlighted in our report from last month as part of that. So I also wanted to speak briefly to the two proposed capital projects. The digitization one, we're bringing forward as a request from the board. But Central Branch, this will be interesting. Report is going to council in August. That will make recommendations about the timing for the new central branch, and depending on council, that could get moving soon. So that is I put it in here, but it is stay tuned. There's a lot of conversations around the downtown cultural hub and getting that started. Based on the model that we're currently looking at, the library is the linchpin. We need to start before anything else can happen for the rest of the downtown cultural hub. So if there's timing in place, what does that mean for us? One of the commissioners, I can't remember which one, it's not Colleen, Neil Garby, is bringing a report to council in August. And so we'll have more information based on that, depending on council direction. But it is a potential exciting development that could happen, hopefully, over the next couple of years. So I will just flag, because I put that in there just as a headline. And the only other point is, due to the advanced timelines, we will need to have an August board meeting. Although I will focus it, hopefully, we'll have a conversation, but maybe just on budget.
Oh, yeah, a budget, yeah. Okay, Rod.
Oh, there we are, I'm on, good. A bit curious about the central branch item, because when we started at the board and we had that really good orientation for new members like myself, I'd asked, is a decision made on this? And I thought the answer was a decision is there to the town has made a decision to decentralize some services, but that no decision is yet made about the central library closing where it is and moving to the post office building. What I'm reading here is not really, that doesn't really support that. It says basically, propose that work on a new central library begin as part of the downtown. So it seems like a decision has been made on this.
The direction we've been provided is to plan for the new library to be at the post office site.
Sorry?
The direction we've been provided is to plan for the new library to be at the post office site.
Plan for it, okay. So the report will be planning for it, and now we're having an August meeting so that we can see the draft that's going to be going to council in September, or?
For the operating budget, yes. And hopefully the capital budget, but it will depend on when council is. I think council's after the board meeting in August.
When is the board meeting in August?
It's a great question. August 17th. So I think council's after it. 2 days before, okay. So it might be, for the capital piece, it might be, but the operating will come forward. What normally happens is the budget drivers kind of gives me guidance from the board, and then it used to be the September meeting, will now be the August meeting, will be a much more detailed budget about what we're proposing for feedback from the board, and then the board will approve it at the next one. We're still trying to figure out the new process because previously our budget was fully incorporated in the commission budget. But it sounds like it's a little bit separate this time, so I think we're gonna have to figure some of these things out in terms of the board's role versus council's role with those aspects, which is why I think getting it in August and starting that conversation that way, town finance and town EMT is aware of the direction that the board wishes is clear.
Rod, is that satisfactory to you?
I think it is. I mean, we'll be looking at a report in August that will enable a fulsome, is that a real word?
It is.
Fulsome discussion on this to look at all the pros and cons and the plan to go ahead and what that will involve for the new building and how its square footage shakes out versus the old building and that sort of thing. It'll all be there, right?
I don't think so.
No? It's just a budget for it.
Just the budget for it. I'm not sure what the exact, and I don't know if Colleen's still on and can speak more to what'll be going in August.
If I may interject, we met around the Downtown Cultural Hub late this afternoon. So this is the executive leadership team, including Neil Garvey, who is the corporate lead. So the intent is that, if you remember, I mentioned September 6th is a key date for anything that is brand new that is coming forward. So the DCH was originally going to go in August, as Tara has identified. We have now put it to September, and the intent was so that there would be an opportunity for Tara to bring forward a report to advise the board on the direction and of what's happening with the Downtown Cultural Hub and how it impacts the library specifically. One of the reasons why we were looking at the library moving to the post office sooner rather than later is because we are finding that the current building has inherent problems that were aggravated earlier this year by the 3-floor flood and some other longer term issues that we need to deal with sooner rather than later. So what we would like to do is we will be putting into the budget for 2024 detailed design dollars so that we can immediately hit the ground running and get a move on with respect to the library because it is a little bit time sensitive on relocation with shovels in the ground early in 25. So this is a project that is going to be accelerated in exactly the same manner as we have for 16 Mile Sports Complex expansion and the 16 Mile Library. So what Tara will be coming back with at a high level is a couple of things. One, what's going to be happening with the corporate functions for the library as an organization, meaning her administration. Is the group going to be co-located with the central library, or is there an option to move that team somewhere else, for example, Woodside? So we're going to be meeting shortly with facilities to work through a comparative analysis of how that might work. And that would certainly be something we would want to get your input on as well. So it's a fast moving file, much faster than we had originally contemplated when we were looking at the Downtown Cultural Hub last year. However, there is a real opportunity for the library to have a huge renewal of the central library and have it be a real showcase facility downtown, which I think is an absolutely fantastic opportunity. And I think it also speaks volumes about how the town values the library, because it's the first out of the starting gate in terms of being moved to a new location and the whole revitalization piece. So I hope that's helpful.
Rod, you still have the floor?
No, that is helpful. Thank you. It's cleared up some, the wording. I was curious about this when I first read it. Thank you.
Thank you. Rebecca?
I think just to add to what Rod was asking, and Tara, like I think I just got this sense from you that you were asked to keep it at 4.72 and 4.5,
yeah.
and then now it's 6.82. Again, not looking at here. But do you anticipate that, because we're kind of doing things backwards, asking for budget before really talking about, you know, what's included in it, do you anticipate that you may not get the budget that you've asked for and that will be kind of forced to cut some of the other things that you need?
Not necessarily. I mean, what the process happens is, you know, if the board's direction is, we like the idea, you can't have 7.79, figure out how to get to 4.5, then we can come and be like, we can get to 4.5, but that means that we need to do this, this, and this. It may need that we gain this service, but we need to cut this service and this service. But we work very closely with the town, and 4.5 is the direction. I'm assuming the board is also giving the 4.5 direction, in which case that is our goal. We will not submit something that's not what we were directed to do.
Sorry, is that what we're supposed to suggest then, that you do kind of come down?
Well, so this budget, I didn't even know what the 4.5 was, right? So, you know, Burlington's at like 8 something. So, I mean, and you know, we talked about the regions at like 5 points. So we didn't know. So basically what we look at is where are our struggles, and then how do we think we can address it? So I knew when I put the 6.79, it was never gonna be 6.79. This is like the first pass at a budget. It's always super high. But it's also like the board can say that, nope, like just, it's a status quo year. Just give me everything that's status quo. No new services, don't address those issues. We will deal with them later on, and we'll try and be resourceful in other kind of ways. And we're just like, okay, then that's how we will prepare it. Or it's, do you need full-time, 2 full-time, or do you just need 1 full-time? Can you explore that? And then come back with different options. It's really just a sense of what the board's priorities are. Is it like, no, we don't need the staff, but we really do think that we need to have that 100,000 for collection. So figure out how options for that. That's really what I'm looking for the board to provide me direction with.
But for clarity, you're not looking for that direction tonight, are you?
Well, it would be a good indicator of if there's something in here that a member of the board wants to discuss and be like, no, we don't want to do that, or is the board overall supportive of it and then wants us to explore different options? That's always been the purpose of the budget drivers, has been, hey, these are the things that are driving the creation of the budget. Are there things that we're missing that the board is like, hey, like this is what we're seeing, where is that being addressed? Or is it, no, like you're not getting any new staff. We don't think that's an appropriate solution for your problem. Look at other options.
So can I clarify?
Yep.
Maybe I'm missing a document, but I don't actually see a proposed budget in here. I just see the narrative report. Is there, like I saw it when you popped up on the screen, the PowerPoint, is that in the agenda somewhere that I've missed?
It's not. So this is.
Because it's going to be kind of hard to give advice without that level of, I mean, I got to see it for a couple seconds.
Yeah.
So,
no, I recognize that. Sorry?
If I may, Mr. Chair, to your point, and in fairness to Tara, this was a very difficult conversation to have in terms of what she was able to present and not present. And that was because we knew that the strong mayor legislation was coming into play. We weren't sure what the direction was going to be from the mayor. We got that direction late last night. So Tara has been operating in a little bit of a vacuum. And so it has been difficult. So I think what her intent here is today is to simply say, here's all the pressures that we have. Are there ones that you feel are a higher priority or not? So for example, do you see collections as the top priority? Do you see adding a couple of staff to Glen Abbey to deal with the pressures as a top priority? Or do you want to give direction to Tara as an example and say, can you find a creative way to fund the collections? Do you want to fund them out of fundraising this year, or so that it provides you with a little bit of budget room? So all she's looking for is high level direction. And on behalf of the town, I apologize. We would normally Tara would have had a lot more time to provide more definitive information to the board had we not had the strong mayor legislation. So it's a very, I would describe this delicately as an organic process.
So I'll get to, I think I have a speakers list. Do I? I think Avis wants to speak. But before I get to Avis, I just want to ask this question. So do you absolutely need this direction tonight, or can it wait until August when we actually have a meeting just on budget issues?
So it was the intent to bring a proposed budget in August, which we can do.
Yeah.
It's just how much refinement will be required after that. So we can do that if that's the preferred way that the board would approach it.
I'll leave it up to my colleagues to discuss that, but I guess typically the way that I'm used to managing budget process, and I know this is, and I didn't mean to be critical when I asked that question, because I do know that it's a moving target for sure, the whole process. So I apologize if it was taken that way, because Colleen jumped to your defense, and
No.
I wasn't. If it came off,
It was a lot of back and forth about what could and could not go into the report.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So,
And one thing I will say is everything has been accelerated by 4 weeks.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So, I mean, typically the way I'm used to it is that when staff present a budget to us, we see the overall budget, and then we can see where the compromises are made.
Yep.
Because it's, and again, I'm going to let the board members talk about this, but just explaining my experience. When you're asking for direction, you don't always know what the implications are, right? So it's like one of these things where you have to say, well, what happens to this if you do this kind of thing? And if without that spreadsheet, it's very hard to do that.
Yeah.
From my perspective, maybe other members of the board have a more clear idea of what they're looking for. But so let's find out. We'll go to Avis, who wants to speak next.
Thank you. So I don't know if you can flash those numbers up again.
Yeah, he can put it back up.
So it's kind of a follow-on to the councillor's, to chair's comments. I just would like to understand what are the actual flexible the options that we have with regards to the personnel costs. Like I'm not 100% clear on what percentage of employees are unionized, and therefore those collective agreement increases are not flexible. So of all of those choices, like what of those, because when I look at the numbers, it feels like there's not much, if you apply the 4.5% and you just look at that 382,000, I think, of personnel costs, there's not much else left. So that would require a reduction of something else.
Correct.
Not just those, so you've got the 100,000 of material costs, and then you have the new positions. But is there something else that can be taken away that's in the current year budget that we don't need as much? Like that's the kind of information I think that would also be helpful.
I guess, and absolutely so, and this would have normally been in the report, but so as you can see, the inflation on personnel all the way down.
We can't see it. The budget, the document's not on the screen for us.
Can they see it?
No.
Sorry, I thought you could see it.
No. We can all come right there.
Okay.
No, these have to.
When I do my CEO update, you guys normally see it, yeah?
Yeah. I don't think anybody has Zoom on. I think that's the problem. You guys are used to having us at council with Zoom on all the computers. And we don't have that tonight.
So while he's working on that, I will say that the majority of items on this list are not.
We got it. We got it.
Okay. We're good. Are not overly flexible. The inflation on personnel, inflation on collections and utilities, insurance, revenue, operating impact from the capital project, our new courier vehicle are pretty, we need, those are standards. Adjustment to personnel costs is slightly different, but again, relates to our collective agreement and how people move through the pay grid. So I will also flag that our collective agreement ends at the end of this year. So we'll be going into collective bargaining into 2024. The town, we have a CUPE union. The town also has 2 CUPE unions. They are in negotiations right now. So right now, we match the town wherever possible. So we're going off recommendations on them, but they're still in negotiation. So that is a bit of an ambiguous piece that we're trying to guess at, because labor negotiations right now across the board are challenging. So we're not sure what to expect as part of the negotiations next year, or even what is happening with the 2 town unions this year, but it will absolutely inform what we will be negotiating for next year. So that's an added kind of complexity for 2024. So you're right, if we put, so everything on there that says inflation, we used a 3% inflation to come up with those numbers initially, because we didn't have the 4.5. I still need to have a conversation with finance about whether or not that needs to be adjusted to 4.5, because in that case, we are over 4.5 just for inflation, which means we have to come up with savings just to meet the 4.5. So there are ongoing conversations that need to happen with finance now that we got the direction as of last night. But as Colleen alluded to, we do have a healthy fundraising reserve that is an option for use. We haven't traditionally used it to fund positions or operating. It tends to be used for new initiatives, new pieces of equipment, or different kinds of those. And then once things get, so for example, we'll introduce, the baby welcome kits. We funded that through fundraising, with the idea being that eventually we would put that through operating as it becomes operating. We use fundraising as more of like an initiation. Let's pilot something, let's try it, let's buy the initial equipment, and if it's successful, then it moves into operating. And we budget for it accordingly for that. So that's primarily been our use for fundraising. I'm not advocating that we use fundraising for all of these. I think we need to be selective about it, but it is an option that the board can look at. As well as, are there services that we should just take another peek at? I'm not recommending service cuts, but we are seeing pressures in different areas. And I think we're coming to the point where we're gonna have to start making some hard choices. As the board that's been around for the last term will recognize, we've made reductions over the past number of years. So we're lean. We did a pseudo zero-based budget project last year that we kind of rebuilt things from scratch and kind of established what those core budgets should be. And so we made some adjustments for that. We didn't fully get to where we need to be in some areas, so there is still some growth that we would like to see over the next coming years. But I also recognize that it's hard financial times and taxpayers are also struggling. So how do we find the ability to provide them with the services that they need and love and continue to grow while not impacting the tax levy to an extreme amount?
Avis, are you okay with that? Thank you. I'm gonna go to Andrew in just a second, and then Bill, and then Celso. But before I do that, I just want a point of clarification. Are we legally actually allowed to use fundraising for operating?
Yes.
We can?
Yeah.
Okay. I know that some organizations can't. I wasn't sure if that was something that we were.
That's my understanding. I know other libraries that have. I mean, I can double check, but that's always been our understanding. But as you know, we've shied away from it in the past.
I always thought there was some. I thought there was requirements under.
It's not a
legislation.
long-term solution,
Yeah.
particularly if related to staff.
It's very
but it could
much
be-
a dangerous
Yeah.
solution. And other point of clarification for Colleen. Colleen, do you have any further input on the inflation factor that finance is using? Or I guess you guys probably you've probably shared all the information at this point between you.
Last night.
We have. But I don't think we have anything I think the single biggest issue that we're all concerned about is the fact that we're, to the discussion last night about forecasting and the lack of reliability. In the past, I think staff have done a phenomenal job of being able to forecast relatively accurately where their budgets are going to come in. This might be one of the first years where, if you take the pandemic years out of the equation, obviously, where we're really not quite sure where everything's going to land. So you may see over the course of the next fiscal year some odd fluctuations, which Tara will flag for you.
Okay, and last point of clarification, just before we move on to the next speaker, is are we able to, within our budget envelope, are we able to take into account assessment growth? Or is that only being done at the overall municipal level? Because usually there's an assessment growth.
I don't have the answer. I don't have the answer to that question, Mr. Chair. I will find out.
Because that could potentially get us 1 to 1.5% additional if we're allowed to use that tax room. I know for example, the police board, we do get to use it. So I just wasn't sure what the policy is here. Okay, those are my points of clarification. We're going to start we're going to move to the left side with Andrew in the lead.
Thank you, Colleen, for that fulsome report, and Tara for doing your best under the circumstances. Viewing this table, it occurs to me that this is not gilded in any way. This is sort of what you see as the minimum to maintain an adequate, appropriate level of service. With that said, yes, there are many pressures on ratepayers, especially anyone who lives in a home, be it rented or owned, which is everybody. So it's probably going to be a tough uphill climb to get a lot more funding. I guess my advice, and we'll see what the rest of the board thinks, would be to write a budget that meets that 4.5% exactly, and tough choices may need to be made to achieve that target. But secondarily, have a plan A plus or an asterisk or something that shows the additional funds you would need to operate comfortably to relieve some of those pressures off of Glen Abbey and the marketing department and so on. Because I think they're valid requests. We understand the strain, and obviously, we could hold ourselves to 4.5 and make a lot of cuts, but then if the service level drops, precipitously, we're going to hear complaints from the patrons as well. So we've got to balance that act, and I think council deserves to see all of that. My 2 cents.
We're going to flesh a lot of this out in the consultation phase too, I think. We'll hear from members of the public as to where their comfort level is in terms of reducing services, because typically speaking, oh, sorry, I see IT put the microphone on for me, thank you. Typically speaking, the public are, as adverse as they are to tax increases, are also adverse to cutting services that they know and love. So there's always that real tension between those two aspects of the municipal governance life. Bill, you're up next.
Sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you were done.
I just want to double check because it's 6.72% of the text, but 6.79% in the table.
Yeah, that's my mistake.
No worries. I know it was done in a rushed way, but is it the 679 we're looking at?
It's the one that's in the table.
Yeah,
yes.
perfect.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That's a big delta.
Yes, I know.
Yeah. Bill.
I just wanted to mention, though, that in terms of fundraising, the collections, I think, would be a perfect fundraising idea, because, when I was reading all that information today and, how it's expanded and, we're doing so many different things now that people can come to the library for. And I just think that, that should be, I would think that would be a really cool thing to actually go to the public and look for some help on that, because I think it'd be a good selling point. So anyway, that's all I wanted to say.
I should flag that we have almost $1 million in our fundraising.
Is that billion with an M or billion with a B?
Pardon? No, it's an M. It's an M.
I thought I heard billion, but I was
No.
hopeful.
So we do
richest- the
continue
richest library on the
to
planet.
fundraise, and collections does tend to be a popular draw, but.
Thank you. Celso, you're up.
I'd like to suggest a small twist on what Andrew suggested, as far as guidance is concerned for the budget. So I think we should put together the budget as you think is the right thing to do to maintain the same levels, which is similar to what, and maybe with a few changes as you think about this too. But maybe we should, for the August meeting, have a few options to discuss in terms of if push comes to shove and we have to bring it down, what are the options that we have on the table? Just right now, you provided 3. You said, maybe we can just drop the new things and that will take us back to 4.6. Or maybe we'll use fundraising money for this. That's option 2. Or maybe we'll drop services. That's option 3. And which services will those be? And maybe there's another option that we'll think about in the next. So I think the discussion next month should be about what are the things that we as a board would like to entertain, if any, in case we have to bring it down to 4.5. But if not, we'll go with 6.8, and that's what we collectively agree. And I'd like to suggest one extra option for you to consider. Looking at 2 data points from some of the other reports. So 5 of our branches represent 90% of the circulation. And I know that circulation is not everything that happens. And comparing to some of the other towns, about the same size as ours, we have more locations than they do. So is dropping one location a possibility to save cost and bring us there? I know it's controversial, just wanted to leave it up there.
Yeah, that would be a board direction.
Yeah, that's a tough thing for staff to comment on. And I think you just made the speaking point for the night, by the way. If the media are watching, that's gonna be the one they're gonna pick up on. No, don't apologize. It's a very real, it's something we have to take into consideration. I mean, there's gonna be a lot that's gonna ride on what the inflation factor is. Do we get access to the assessment growth this year? I mean, there's a number of things we have to know. I think that the advice I'm hearing is pretty solid in terms of presenting a plan A and a plan B. Plan A being complying with the town's guidance, and plan B is what you want, what we would need to basically move forward without any enhancements. And I think, hopefully that can go to the committee and the public consultation piece, and just find out what the comfort level is of the public. I mean, I don't think there's a choice, really.
No.
And, we can that certainly will be a conversation piece, I imagine, during the budget process, but I don't think it'd be one that would be very popular amongst the community. We're sort of in the process of opening libraries, not contracting. So, okay.
Did Meredith have her hand up?
I'm sorry?
Meredith had her hand up.
Oh, I'm sorry. I can't see I can't see what's happening. So I apologize, Meredith. No, nobody can see Meredith. Is she actually there?
I'm here.
There's Meredith.
Yes. Hello.
Hi.
Sorry, I had my hand up. I thought you could see. I just wanted to be added to ask a question. So yeah, I mean, a lot of the comments and questions that I had were already been mentioned by my board peers. But I mean, certainly when I look at the chart, the eye goes to the personnel costs, because that is, the largest driver. So I'm assuming the inflation to the personnel and the adjustments to the personnel are fixed costs based on the budget. And is that budgeted for what you expect the outcome of the collective bargaining will result in? Are those adjustments? Is that sort of your best forecast?
Those are the estimates that we have at this time, yeah.
Okay. And then it looks like that's not necessarily net new headcount. That's just adjustments for our existing headcount at the library. And then there's also the proposal to add in 3 new headcounts for a total of 248,000.
Correct.
Yeah. Okay. So is it possible to offset the net new headcount in the areas where you're having the pressure points through attrition through your existing headcounts, whether it's through, branches with lower foot traffic or areas that aren't as busy? Is that an option that can be entertained?
Every time a position is vacated, we do look at it to determine whether or not it needs to remain where it is or whether or not it can be reallocated to another area. We do keep a list of needed positions and different branches. That way, if this comes up and through conversations with the branches, like, okay, we actually, just say we had a position that's 28 hours, that vacated, turns out we only need 22. Sometimes it's a whole position, sometimes it's hours. But we are constantly looking at how we can make the best use of it. So it's something we can continue to look at. However, we have done a lot of adjustments with our staff over the last 4 or 5 years. So I'm not sure there's a ton of room. One thing that we are looking at doing more of is creating more of a, I don't know how to use the right word. Transitional staff doesn't quite work, but like if just say Woodside branch has a staff member, who's working 28 hours, but they really only need it for 21. We've been looking at reassigning that other shift to another branch like Glen Abbey in order to assist up there. And that's been easing some of the pressure up at Glen Abbey, but it doesn't really address the long-term problem for it. It's stopgap measures about where we can borrow hours and staff from other positions. I will say one of the reasons I also brought forward new positions is because we're actually struggling with staff at Glen Abbey. We've had staff leave Glen Abbey. They feel it's too hard to work up there. The demands, there's just too much. They feel overwhelmed. And so we've had challenges with staff taking other positions and then trying to fill positions at Glen Abbey. When we post vacant shifts, they're hard to fill. People don't want to take them. And so that's one of the reasons that we brought this idea forward. But that's not to say that we're looking at all avenues to how we can continue to support and grow.
Great, thank you. And then my second comment was just to, I guess, echo what Bill had said, which is that I see the collections, especially the growing collections of things, as would be to me, a perfect way to offset with fundraising dollars, whether it's with existing reserves or, a plan to raise additional.
Thanks.
So I would support that recommendation.
Thanks, Meredith. Further comments or questions? So, sorry, go ahead, Rebecca.
I just wanted to say, in terms of personnel, I think regardless of the decision that we make this year, I think we'll be back trying to make that same decision next year. So I just think it's something that we'll consider, even if we can't do it this year, it's not like you're not going to need that help next year. So just in terms of sustainability, I think we're either going to have to deal with it now or next year. And so I don't think the position that our economy is in is going to get much better. So maybe we just consider that as we're looking at the budget this year.
Yeah, I can make a brief comment on that. I think you're right. I think the economy is not necessarily going to recover between 2024 and 2025, but I think what may happen is that we may have a better sense of municipal finance in general between now and then in terms of what that looks like. Because we're in the midst of this whole bill, what is Bill 23? That's the Bill 23 basically threw the municipalities into total disarray because we are looking at right-sizing government right now. What's properly managed by the region? What's properly managed by the local municipality? And so right now we know that, for example, the town is going to be fully responsible for planning. So that means there's a whole budget shift has to happen there. And is there tax room that you gain because of that, or is it a wash, or is there a net benefit? So there's a lot of things that we're going to learn over the next year. So while your point is, you're bang on. We may be in a better position. I'm being glass half full here. Yeah. I think we may be in a little better position next year to understand what our future looks like. But right now, there's just so much gray, and there's probably more we don't know than we do at this point. So I actually feel terrible for the staff that are trying to manage all this, because it seems like every Friday at 4:30 there's another announcement that impacts their what their next month's going to look like. So it's a real challenge this year for sure. Now I have a question. Is there any gapping savings is there any position that we may be able to not fill for 2024 in order to, but leave that, gap it, leave that position open for the following year? Is there any-
We can look at positions as they become vacant for the
Yeah.
rest of the year.
Yeah.
We do budget gapping right now. And again, I think one of the additional challenges that we face is for the last 5 or 6 years, we've run surpluses. During the pandemic, large surpluses. This year, we're looking at a $400,000 surplus, the majority of which is gapping. So we've been really trying to bring our gapping under control and do better understand where we are, because we can, during we're running surpluses, we do tend to use it a little bit to fill some of these gaps in year where possible. But we can definitely look at, I would say there's none currently, but we can kind of see what happens through the rest of the year.
Okay. And second point I was going to ask about is, and it's just flown out of my head. Oh, yes, library branch hours. I know we've had a lot of conversation about that over the years. Is there any flexibility there that you can see? Are there any new trends that we've learned post-pandemic about, hours of operation? Are there any hours that we could easily pare away? Because, I mean, hours of operation have a big impact on budget.
So when we came back from COVID, we did a realignment and we actually moved around hours. So pre-pandemic, we were pretty consistent across the board. All the branches except for Clearview and 16 Mile kept the exact same hours. But we did make readjustments. For example, Central Children's, Woodside, White Oaks, they now close earlier. And we moved those hours to Glen Abbey and Iroquois Ridge to try and increase the hours on Friday. The challenge that we have, I don't think there is. If anything, from the public consultation, people want more hours. So that's actually the struggle as we continue to look at, can we kind of like peel here and kind of stick them there. But there's normally a line when we open and we're booting people out at night. And a lot of the public consultation that we did for the master plan spoke to people needing spaces in the evening, especially students, they want to study. So we're looking at options that may allow us to do that in unique, creative ways to offer those types of services. And I imagine as Oakville intensifies and there's more condos and smaller spaces, that the need for us to provide those spaces may actually grow. So those are some of the challenges that we're facing, but we do consistently look at hours, and we're working on, Joe and his team are working on creating reports and dashboards that are much more current and up to date to help us understand the traffic flow that's happening, that maybe there's maybe adjustments seasonally that we can do, although there's always complications when you change your hours seasonally. There's always that initial confusion. We used to have summer hours versus non-summer hours. We brought them all into alignment. So there's options that we can look at, but I would say right now the demand is more hours, not less.
That's generally what the reaction has been from the board over the years, is that when you come back with, we're going to cut these hours, the board's usually the first. Bill will remember, Andrew too. We had a big discussion about this last time, but I mean, maybe we're in the same financial circumstances. The third thing, if this is 3, I may have lost count. My third question is, a lot of other cultural organizations rely on volunteers to help supplement their staffing. So if you go to places like RBG or in museums and such, you'll always find there's always a certain element of volunteerism that fills the need within those organizations. Is that something we've ever looked at?
We do have volunteers. We do have it also in our CBA about what volunteers can and cannot do.
Yeah.
So we have sorter volunteers that work for our book sale. And then we have a lot of teen volunteers that assist with programs. We have like a program where teens come in and help kids learn to read. They help with our summer reading program. So they're very defined, but our collective agreement is very clear about what volunteers cannot do. And that is the work of staff.
Is there any wiggle, like not wiggle room, that's not what I meant to say. Is there anything that's in the collective agreement that we have not exploited at this point?
Not that I know of.
Not that you know. Is that something maybe you could just have a look at? And
We can take a look at that,
okay.
Yeah.
Because I know how people feel about their library, and I bet you there's more than a couple people out there that would say, I'm in, I'll come and do that. Because I know some organizations that are, they're rewarded with the luxury of riches of volunteers and often can't deploy them into tasks that are meaningful for them. So it'd be useful. Okay. I don't know if I've sparked any additional questions or interests also. Yep.
One more comment I just realized. You're running 8.2% below budget as it is, right? Under budget.
Right
So-
now?
You're right now.
Yes.
If the 4.5% is actual to budget, then you have even a bigger problem.
Yep.
But if it's budget to budget, you have 13% to work with, and your problem is solved. Do you see what I mean?
If we run a surplus.
Right. You don't get to carry it.
No, the town, all our surplus at the end of the year reverts back to the town.
Exactly.
Yep.
But is the 4.5% calculated over the approved budget or from your actuals?
It's from the approved budget.
Then you're in great shape right now. Because you're running well over budget. So if you just carry your run rate into next year, you're in fantastic shape.
But we'd have to keep the same surplus.
Yeah.
But that's your run rate. That's what it takes for you to operate as it is today.
Yeah.
So you just continue operating the same way you are. You have actually 8% room before you even hit budget.
Yeah, I mean, some of that surplus is vacant positions, one of them being the
yeah,
Director of Customer Experience, which we will.
Which is the point he made earlier, right?
yeah,
So
yeah.
you seem to have a lot of room to maneuver here.
And that's part of our challenge, is that we're not actually sure entirely what room we have, because we've never had a consistent kind of surplus to understand, but I hear definitely what you're saying. Because I do think you're right, there is something in there, because I've been here 9 years and we've always had a surplus. But it's always figuring out, it's never been a consistent reason for the surplus. And so I think that we need to sort that out. But we did start budgeting gapping a number of years ago, and we started relatively conservative with that. So it is something that we're looking at is because we're 70% part-time. And there is transition within those positions. And of course, you vacate one position, it can take 9 months for us to fill all the bumps that happen from that. So definitely trying to get a better sense of what we could budget for gapping. Right now, we budget $100,000 annually for gapping.
Perhaps that's a piece of direction, though, is to look at those numbers carefully under the microscope to see if there is anything that is, I won't call it padding, but if there's anything that's there that, might be shaved off, because even a few quarter points here and there can add up to a lot. So it's a good point Celso makes. And in addition to gapping, maybe I think another board direction would be to go and have a look with a very careful, lens as to what the realities are, looking at your budget versus actual numbers.
Yeah, I also think we could take a look at, and that'll come back, is if we're doing the number of capital projects that we might be doing, then we might have to readjust what we're doing operationally, and so we may be able to adjust there. Because a new central library will take up a significant amount of time and reduce for initiatives that we're going to be able to do in-house. So we could also take a look at that, which is, I think, what Celso was addressing.
So can I ask you, did you get some input there that you find
That was very helpful, thank you.
Okay. Colleen, do you think that was useful information as well? Okay. Okay, members of the board, our motion is to receive, I believe. The report is to be received for feedback. So I simply need a motion to receive for feedback. Thank you, Celso. Thank you, Andrew. Further comments or questions? All in favor? Carried. Good luck. CEO goals. I should say good luck to all of us, actually, because we all carry the responsibility at the board, council carries at the council, and we all carry it at our homes. So it's going to be a challenging period. That 0.5% interest is going to impact a lot of folks.
Lawyer's at the door, so apologies. The lawyer is at the door.
Should we be worried?
Pardon?
Should we be worried?
No. No.
Okay, CEO goals, 8.2.
So I normally bring an update quarterly just to report on where we are with the CEO goals annually. So this is for Q2, just to highlight a couple different aspects. I think overall, everything is moving along really, really well. The first one, the diversity, equity, and inclusion, we have made some great progress with that. We formed our first diversity, equity, and inclusion employee resource group earlier in the year, and they have been amazing. They've been eager and really passionate to commit Earlier in the year, I think it was May or June, the town introduced pronouns that could be added to our email signatures. They worked to create training modules for staff to really speak about the importance of pronoun use and allyship and how it all connects together. They're really eager to start having conversations with different managers about things that they see in the branches, because they're from all levels and all branches. And they have some really great thoughts about things like our story time and how do we make them a bit more accessible and welcoming. And so they've been a great addition, and I'm really looking forward to taking full advantage of them. As well, I think we've seen some great recruitment opportunities in order to help diversify our workforce, which has been amazing. We're talking about new ways to take advantage of that, hiring people with different language skills, and then potentially introducing different language story times, or we're talking about updating our name tags where people are willing to have their language. So if people see that, they can see that somebody speaks Cantonese or somebody can speak Ukrainian and be able to connect with those individuals and really take advantage of those skill sets within our staff that we aren't right now. So definitely making some great progress there. As well as the talent management strategy, we have provided updates for the goals that we have made progress in. One of the comments when they were approved was to clean up some of the metrics. And for some of these, and I think we made the point in here into some of them just to kind of clarify that this is the first year we're implementing it. So some of it is just creating the base metric and really looking at, okay, where are we? And then next year and the year after, we can set growth metrics. We've also, we made some assumptions when we created this. One of them being the town continuing to do some of these surveys, and they have currently put pauses on them. So we are now investigating ways that we can get updates and checkpoints ourselves in order to kind of move them forward to be able to go, okay, this is our baseline, and how do we check in annually to make sure that we're making the progress that we want to. So that's under further investigation, and we'll update those as we go. I also wanted to flag, and this also goes back a little bit to some of the questions that were asked during the performance and measures, is that card holders has always been a traditional measurement for libraries. But I always question the depth in which we put into it, because a household can have one card or it can have 5 cards. And that doesn't necessarily speak to impact, because we know that families sometimes will have 5 cards but only ever use 1 card. Because if you have kids, you really want to figure out what's on different cards. So we're looking at introducing card holders by household to really understand how many unique addresses within Oakville have library cards, and what is our penetration and where are our gaps if we use GIS to really understand where are we in the neighborhoods and where do we need to be in terms of neighborhoods. So we are in progress. However, one of the things that we did run into when we started to pull household data is that our database data isn't clean, especially related to buildings with multiple dwellings. So we went to pull it and realized that apartment is apartment, unit, number, dollar sign, not dollar sign, number sign. So we are in the process of cleaning that up. And so we're hoping to have in Q3 actually get a really clear number and then set growth for that throughout. But I do think we will see some growth in there, but it's something that we didn't know was bad data until we went and looked at it. So I'm really glad that we're cleaning it up. And then we're also looking at how to ensure that it stays clean moving forward, because it's entered by staff manually. And so even though there are standards when there's 10 people in front of you, they're rushing, they're just putting it in. So can we put another checkpoint in there, some validation? So it's really a 2-point process where we need to clean up what it is, and then how we look at how do we ensure that the data that goes in is clean to start with. That way we can pull that number on a really regular basis. So those are really like my top things I wanted to highlight for this report, but I'm happy to take questions.
Okay, well, let's see if we have any questions. Celso?
Thank you for putting the targets where it was possible, and I recognize in some cases you can't because you don't have the baseline. Maybe in those cases we can just say establish the baseline, so that we're not, I guess, at the end of the year when we have to do this evaluation, we say, oh, how much was the increase? Well, we don't even have the baseline. An example of that in the DEI, is, the very first one says increase in the representation of diverse employees. If you don't have that baseline, maybe it's just establishing a baseline, I guess. Make sense?
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you. Further comments or questions? Okay, I have a question. So the partnerships in progress, RibFest, what are you doing with RibFest?
So that's really exciting. This is the first time that we've been involved with RibFest, but we are doing Saturday and Sunday. We are doing story times, 3 story times at RibFest on each day. So we will have a tent set up, and then staff will be there on Saturday and Sunday, I think 10 to 4. And then I can't remember the exact hours of story time. They may be in the CEO update report at the end. I can't remember, but it's...
I don't mean to steal your thunder there.
Oh yeah, 1, 2, and 3.
Okay. Well, that's kind of cool.
Yeah, we're excited. It gets a lot of people, so.
It is, and if anybody that isn't aware of RibFest, it's actually not this weekend, but the following weekend. So we hope to see you there. It's a great event. I've been involved with it since its inception. So.
And back in person this year.
And back in person this year. So and it's not just ribs. There's more than just ribs. So all you non-pork eaters, there's chicken and beef ribs and all kinds of great things. So that's my commercial endorsement. I'll go back one last time for comments or questions and look for a motion to receive. Don't all jump at once. Thank you, Rebecca, seconded by Andrew. All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. And we'll see you at RibFest. Internet. I'm sorry?
Virtual RibFest just isn't the same.
Virtual RibFest is, well, you get barbecue sauce all over your screen. Okay, 8.3, Internet access and acceptable use policy to be received for approval.
I'm gonna let Joe. Oh, okay. I know apparently you're gonna get to listen to me. So there was no comments or request for changes last board meeting. So our practice is to bring it for feedback and then bring it for approval. So we brought it back for approval.
Okay, members of the board, are we ready to give this our blessing? Okay, thank you. Celso's moved it. Thank you very much. Is there a seconder for that? Thank you, Rod. All in favor? That is carried. Program development and delivery policy. This is another policy approval. Is there anything that you wish to draw to our attention on this?
Only that after our conversation at the last board meeting, I did make some adjustments to the request for reconsideration. I clarified the process and who was involved at each process as requested, and then returned it to the CEO as final decision maker for that process.
Can I ask a sidebar question?
Sure.
Have you had any requests for reconsideration recently?
Yes.
Okay. Many?
We've had 2 in the past 2 weeks.
Okay. Can we get an update at some point on?
Absolutely, yeah.
Thank you. Okay. Any comments or questions on this? I'm not seeing any. Can I get a motion to approve it? Andrew, Bill, thank you. All in favor? That's carried. I got to get Meredith in the minutes. Now that I can see her, that's a good thing. Okay, 8.5, occupational health, safety, and workplace violence. Occupational health and safety and workplace violence policy.
So we're required to bring this before the board for approval annually. So this year, there have been some changes based on, we match the town's policy on this, and they did make some adjustments to some language regarding the types of education and training, as well as actually I think that's it. So they did highlight, Tricia did highlight where there was that one addition in terms of the training, but we are looking for comments, but it does align with the towns.
Okay, unlike the previous 2, this is for feedback. So does anybody have any feedback on this one? I'm not seeing any. It looks pretty straightforward to me. So we will look for a motion to receive the matter for feedback, and I guess on next board meeting we'll have it for approval. So if you have any thoughts between now and then bring them to our attention then. Motion, please. Oh, Meredith is going to move this one, right? I see that. Meredith is moving. Is there a seconder? Thanks a lot, Avis. All in favor? That's carried. Oh, look, it's Marcus's report. Halton Information Providers, mid-year review.
Yeah, I'm going to hand it over to Marcus.
We haven't seen you in a long time.
I know. And it's good to be back live in front of you.
Yeah.
Hello, I'm Marcus Logan. I'm the Manager of Community Development and Engagement for the Oakville Public Library. I'm here to talk about a really special program that we lead across Halton and the province, and actually nationally now, and across North America. But I am in charge of and manage a number of different business units. So I'm here now and I have 10 minutes apparently. And I'm going to try and keep it less than 10 minutes because as our chair knows, I can talk a lot. So I manage and oversee Information Oakville, which is a service of, sorry. I knew that was going to change, and I was going to comment on it.
Andrew did, I didn't do it.
Thanks, Andrew, but now you've just chewed up like a minute of my time. I manage Information Oakville, which is a service that we provide here at Oakville Public Library. It engages community, now you're making me nervous, it engages community in programs and services, and we get the word out and help people find services. Also the development fund, which we talk a lot about, which is that seed money that we get requests from staff to do special programming. So there's an application process, and then we allocate money. So between Joe and Tara and I, we kind of watch that. Community outreach. So when we're talking about going to outside the community and finding events to go to, we try to manage that. And dare I say tonight, fundraising is under my portfolio as well. But I'm here really to talk about the Halton Information Providers, which we call HIP. Can I move this forward, or do you have to? Oh, okay, perfect. So the Halton Information Providers is a coalition or a joint venture, as our lawyers like to call it, of the library systems, the 4 library systems in Halton. So Oakville is the lead. We are the trustee for the program, so we take care of the money, we take care of the administration and the decisions. Burlington, Milton, Halton Hills, and then we have the Milton Community Resource Center, as well as taking care of our childcare records. And so we have formed for many years this coalition, and it gets bigger and bigger and bigger as we go. I inherited it when I came here 6 years ago from another sector. And so we've come up with, went through a couple of service reviews, one before me and then one just as I came aboard and started to lead this program. And so we have come up with, we sort of updated it, and the goal really is for us to really take this. We hear a lot that people know about us, and they know about our directory, or they don't know about our directory. We'll talk about what's in the directory in a second. So our mission really is to provide simple and easy access to human services for Halton residents, and we want to be recognized as a vital provider of community information services and a leader in collaboratively powering and animating community information in innovative ways. So under that mission and vision, we have 4 pillars that we try to work with and steer all of our decisions and all of our work in. Next slide, please. So we did have, in 2020 to 2022, we had a strategic plan, and then COVID hit, but we managed to achieve 90% of that plan. And the executive committee, and I'm going to explain a couple of the levels that we have, decided that they would extend the pieces that we didn't finish or couldn't get to because of COVID into another couple of years so that we could achieve those pieces that we really wanted to. So the levels at the Halton Information Providers, the joint venture that we call it, we have we have 3 levels, and so there's a CEO level. So Tara and all of the CEOs of the 4 or 5 organizations get regular updates through their staff who contribute to the program, or I will, if I can, get all of them together at the same date and the same time, give them an update on where we're at and what we're doing. Underneath that, there's an executive level, so Joe sits on that level, so they're managers and directors from the different libraries that are on the coalition, and that's where really I sit as well. And so that level, the executive team really does, I report to them on a regular basis, and I report programs and services that we're coming up with, maybe a grant that we're applying for, any kind of spending that we might want to do for, to enhance the service. So they make those decisions with me and provide some strategic direction. So we're always thinking, what are we doing next? What are we doing next with this community service data? Then we have our editor level, which are all of the worker bees at all of the different libraries. They do the work, they are in the community, they look at the programs and services, and when they change, and when there's new ones, and they add them to our directory. So they are managed by my coordinator of the database, and they meet regularly as well to talk about community and look inside the community to see where we can update our records and create new pieces for the directory. Next slide, please. This is just some of the plan that we moved over to 2023, 2024. We've added a couple of pieces. In my report, you'll see that there is a new server option coming. We have to still investigate that through KCL. So the developer and the platform that our directory sits on is being moved from the town of Oakville, which she's had a number of many years of a service contract, and it's been held here. And in October, it needs to be moved. And so she's looking at where we're moving that and any cost implications. And from what I understand, she is very, very close to not increasing our service level agreement and increasing our pricing. So I'm going to put that on record now, and hopefully that goes out into the world and we don't see any increase. And just, we're looking at developing how do we power, I like to use that word, how do we power, because we have the community services information, which is critical in our world. How do we power 311 for the region? How do we help Kids Help Phone? How do we help Ontario 211? How do we work together and create a system that is useful and culturally relevant when we're giving recommendations for service and programs to the community. So we're always looking at that. One of the ways that we can do that, we look at the Halton region or any other program or service that has a brochure, right? So we talk about printing. So sometimes people or agencies won't print and they have a PDF. We can take that PDF, put it on our website or their website, and we can link it to our community services directory. So every time one of my editors makes a change, an update to hours or location or contact, that PDF on their website will be automatically updated. So there's little things that we can do with the community services directory and the data that we have. Next slide, please. So Halton Information Providers is the joint venture, that's what we're called, HIP. People know us as HIP. They also know us as the Halton Community Services Directory. The Halton Community Services Directory is hipinfo.ca, and that is the directory. That is the community. That's where all of the information lives. So it is a database. It's an online directory. It's available 24/7. We maintain over 4,000 different listings of programs and services that service and provide service for Halton. So sometimes you'll search something and it'll come up as a Toronto agency, but within that agency, they do service people and support people in the Halton region. So they're added to our directory. We are accredited through ERRS, and our data curators are certified in what they do. So every 3 years, they need to have a certain amount of hours of doing the work and education, and they have to take their exam over again to be certified to work within our directories. And that is a standard practice across any information and referral or community services data. So every record, every piece of information in our directory needs to be looked at least once a year to maintain our service levels and to maintain our certification. A lot of records that we have and a lot of the information is set for maybe every month we look at it, maybe every 6 months that we look at it, because things change rapidly. Yes, next slide, please. So what is in our directory? We have lots of, as she said, 4,000, but we have priorities. And so everything that's in our directory is nonprofit, no cost. So we don't put a program or a service that costs people money or have to be paid for. There are some exceptions when we're trying to fill a gap. So sometimes you'll see seniors housing programs in our directory because it fills a gap, and we think it's important. So these are our first priorities. Then we look at our second priorities, and that's what creates what is included or excluded in our directory. Again, these priorities and what we inclusion, exclusion, it matches the provincial 211 and matches any kind of national database that we work with, as well as AIRS, is the US-based community services people organization that certifies us. So they maintain the taxonomy, and the taxonomy are the search terms that we used for people to search on our directory. Next slide, please. So we're always looking for communities of interest, and that to us is a specific community. How do we serve them better? How do we make searching, how do we make the information available to families, to youth, to other organizations who have clients? How do we get them the information faster, less clicks, that type of thing? So on our directory, you'll see we have our main directory, which lists everything. We have a youth, seniors, and a Halton parenting directory. So they're taking the 4,000 different records, and we've sliced it down to youth. So there might be 1,000 records for you. So if you're in that view, you'll get only returns of a search that support youth. Recently, I'm going to talk a little bit about this, but we have a new Halton Halton newcomer info pod. And I know I reported on this a little bit last time, but I thought since we're a new board and we're really excited about this this newcomer info pod project, and so I thought I'd bring it back a little bit. So next slide, please. So we have launched, again, the pandemic, mixed everything up, but 2 or 3 years ago, we sit on the Halton Newcomer Strategy, and I sit on the civic engagement team, and some of their goals always come back. How do we use the directory to support newcomers better? How do we use Marcus's or our team's information to get to newcomers and to provide service to them? And so I applied for a Immigration and Refugee Citizenship Canada grant a number of years ago and was approved for 5 years of funding to create this new product that's in the community. COVID hit. It took us, I don't know, maybe 16 months to actually get the units from during COVID, but we finally got them. And next slide, please. So they look like your cell phone on a stand, but they're big, they're taller than me. And it really is one of the views that we have on our directory, right? And it's all about newcomers. So we worked with HMC, we worked with Achieve, we worked with the newcomer strategy to create the content. I did a number of community consultations and asked newcomers, if you're searching your database as a newcomer, what would you use, what would you be searching for? And what languages would you use? So I got a number of comments. First of all, a lot of newcomers said, just keep it English because we want to practice our English. And then we were told by newcomers that they would try to search for things that were really, really personal, that they weren't ready to talk to their settlement worker about. So things like abuse, perhaps, or income security or food security, those types of things. So we developed it through those consultations. We bought 10, and they are across the Halton region now. We were able to get them out finally, loaded and assembled and branded out into the community in January, just before Christmas. So they're relatively new. The stat that I gave you in your board report are the number of times that it's been looked at. It's over, I think it was over 200 and something thousand hits or people have looked at it. I'm going to caution that stat because at the beginning there was a lot of us looking at it and there's a lot of testing. So, we might be around 10,000 hits of that. Could be us. But it's out in the community at these organizations, and we're getting a lot of really great feedback. I am working with 2 other agencies who knew about it or found out about it through our partners at Ontario 211 and the United Way in York, who knew about our InfoPod because I presented this at a number of information referral conferences as well. And so people are talking about it and modeling. York Library is doing, or Durham region is doing one for poverty. So they're doing a similar, like that cell phone stand, but around poverty. It is attached to Google Translation, so people are able to come up to the front and start touching it. It is a touch screen, and it will translate all of our directory into whatever language they pick. It is Google, so there's thousands of different languages. It's Google, so it's a literal translation, not a cultural translation, which sometimes is an issue. There's a print function because we need to secure the directory, so people can't just come up to it and start using it to like get in their Gmail account and start emailing or go off site and look at things that they shouldn't be in public. So every time somebody comes to it, after they finish it, after just like your cell phone, it will go, are you there? Are you using it? And if you don't answer it, it'll just go dark. It reverts back to the main page, it reverts back to English, and it erases all of the search history of the last person that used it. So it's always fresh and new. What else can I say about that one? I think that's it. So next slide. This is the front page. You can view it anytime. It's actually on the directory as well, so you don't have to be at that station to see it. It's available on our directory as well. So we link back to all of the directories that I talked about: seniors, youth, parenting, and the library services tab has a link to all of the libraries that are in our joint coalition back to get a library card. And the newcomer information at each public library. So we allow people to go off the directory just for those pieces. People are only able to print very small information from each listing that they are looking up. Next slide. This is the second page or the main page underneath the graphics, and so the graphic changes. It's on a carousel. We have the search topics. We have how to get a transit card, how to get financial assistance, what's your emergency care in your local region. So really trying to link information for newcomers. So it links back to settlement.org and the government of Canada. So people have that information that they can look at online or at the actual pod. Next slide. So I'm just going to end here. I always like to end in a fun and positive way. And so I call it our collective and social impact. So the Halton Hills Public Library, within 24 hours, emailed us and said, had a person that came, a newcomer or a new settlement from the Ukraine into our Acton branch, couldn't speak English. So the staff at Halton Hills Public Library were able to use our directory and change it to the Ukraine language, and the person was able to find resources. And just recently, I don't know if Tara's going to talk about this, but we've translated a number of our brochures and a number of our information from the library into different languages. And so we got a report that an Urdu speaking family came in and saw our brochure and felt that it's really welcome to the library because of that. And then our staff were able to use the newcomer page on our directory to again change the language, and the family were able to actually find more programs and services outside of our library. So that's it. Usually I come with a bunch of stats, but I'll save that for the year report, I guess.
Okay. Thanks, Marcus. Questions for Marcus? Celso?
This is really cool. It's hip, I guess.
It's hip. I usually start with a really cheesy joke, but I think Jeff has heard it too many times.
The question is, and I was browsing through it as you were talking. It's really, really good. Do you feel it's widely known out there enough for the community to be able to access, or if not, what can we do to make it even more
Yeah, so we have to work on promoting it a bit more. It's just after we launched it, it happened and it's out there, but we are trying to promote it in different ways. I know Burlington Public Library had an interview with our TV or our community TV at Kojko, and they highlighted it as well. So we still need to do more promotion for sure.
Thank you, all done.
Thank you.
Further questions? I noticed on one of the pages, there was a reference to a mobile app. Where do you stand on that?
Oh, on the strategic plan?
Yeah.
That's been on the on the plan for a long time, so we have to. There's been some changes in the library system as well, so I have to get new people on my executive as well and get them up to speed. So the mobile app is always a question because you can use the directory, you can see it on your tablets and on your phones. It's already capable to do that, so we're not sure if an app is actually what we need to do or spend money on.
Yeah, my own experience is that, because I've had that question too, and I found that by actually having apps, native apps on various devices, my use rates went through the roof because they're convenient, they're scaled to the screen, et cetera. So I know you can use dynamic web apps that do the same thing, but most folks are so attuned to having an app on their device. I think it could really enhance access to the community to have that.
Well, as you know, we developed search widgets, so there's a lot of the widgets that are on other people's websites.
You see them every day.
You see them every day, of course you do. And so we've offered that out to the community. The town of Oakville and all of the town and library staff, our icon shows up on their screen, comes up all the time. So our library staff use it quite often as well. So just trying to get them fast access to
Last
answering those
question
questions.
I have for you is, what was it? I didn't write them down as I was thinking about them. Service Oakville. Is Service Oakville using this?
They do. We do training with them, and so I'm in touch with the manager quite often about it. And I hear from them and also the Halton region that a lot of the questions they get at their call centers are about information on our directory, so they have access to it, and we've done special searches for them, and they know how to use it properly.
Terrific.
But we got to find some other synergies together with those call centers. That how do we help them?
Yeah, hopefully it's like on their desktops, so they know it's there all the time and they can access it. And last question is, why are you moving from the town servers?
Well, the contract is up. We knew this was coming up, so KCL, Kate Lomberger, who manages or has the software and the servers, has had a long history with Oakville and a contract with them. I don't know the ins and outs. Joe might or Tara might, but they decided to not renew that contract. I think it's probably, they're looking at removing any sort of outside vendors?
Yeah, the town decided they no longer wanted to support that.
So that's adding a cost, unfortunately, outside of the ecosystem, the municipal ecosystem.
Well, I just think that I don't want to speak for ITS, but my understanding is that they no longer wanted to host things that weren't theirs. And so they've requested it. It's not just us, there's a number of other impacted organizations.
Thank you.
Yeah, the server holds a number of Canadian programs and special views as well.
I see, okay. Further, one last call for questions? Bill.
Yeah, I just said, I'm just sort of looking at, Halton and whatever. If people want to find you, how do they do it?
Find
Like,
me?
Online.
I'm not online.
Right, I know everybody knows you, but but maybe not everybody. But you know what I mean? Like, do they get online and what would they type in to find you?
Right, so we come up in, because our data is touched and changed a lot, Google loves that, so it pulls our results up a lot. So most of the time, the Google return, the Google search that you're getting, the result will link you back to one of our records. I mean, we're out there in the community. We have
Yeah.
cards. We're out there promoting it. Hip, we try to make our
Right.
our URLs memorable and short.
Right.
So because I'm on the president of Inform Ontario and on Inform Canada, and also a board member of AIRS, there's a lot of promotion and a lot of conferences and a lot of different trainings that we can do in the community as well, and that gets our name out there for sure.
Yeah, okay. Be frustrating though, I'm sure, that more
Well,
people don't know it, right?
Yeah, and it's always, we get a lot, we know the directory, we love the directory, we use it all the time.
Yeah.
And then I'll get a call, or we'll, work with an agency or a church saying, hey, I think we need to, create a list of or database of all the food banks in Halton. And I'm like, we already have that,
already
right?
there,
So they
yeah.
don't know it. So it's just through, being out there and being, standing up on the shoulders of the Oakville Public Library as well, being the lead, it really does attract some attention.
Right, okay, thanks.
Thanks, Bill. Can you move the receipt of the presentation?
I'll make a motion.
Would you mind moving
Sure,
the
I would
receipt?
love
Thank
to.
you. Is there a seconder for that? Thank you, Rebecca. All in favor? That's carried.
Yep.
Okay, thank you, Marcus, very much. Before we go into CEO report, I'm going to declare a 10-minute recess. We've been sitting now for almost 2 hours, and I don't think we have a lot left, but let's get up, stretch our legs, have a bio break, grab a snack in the back, and we'll reconvene at 9:02. Yeah. We're good. Okay, we are back in a session open to the public, and I will report that while we were in closed session, we were not dealing with a proposed or pending acquisition or disposition of land, as was reported when we went into closed session. It was, in fact, personal matters about an identifiable individual, including a municipal or local board employee. So we apologize for that error. And we have given staff direction in closed session. So at this point in time, members of the board, we are at the point of other business. Is there other business to bring before the board this evening? I do not see any. The next matter is the next meeting. So the next meeting is to be determined based on a poll, which you will all receive, and we will determine when we can actually get back together again. So thank you, everybody, for your careful time and attention, our longest meeting so far this term. Appreciate your thoughtfulness and your great comments this evening. Can I get a motion so we can go home? So it's been moved and seconded. Thank you. All in favor? That's carried. Ladies and gentlemen, if you're still watching, then first of all, you are a superstar that you stuck with us this long. And thank you for watching your Oakville Public Library Board meeting on YouTube. Have a great evening and a great rest of the week. Thanks, everybody.